I was very much inspired by Pork Chopper, a fellow YouTuber, to talk to you about hero reworks. I was really inspired to kind of come up with my own ideas based on my own experience and a kind of understanding of Paragon, to kind of give you my ideas of what heroes need reworks and exactly how I think that should be done. Morigesh Action is a game and screen recorder that offers the lowest megabytes per frame, the lowest computer resource usage, and the highest FPS recording. Check the link in the video description to learn more. Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a Paragon guide. I am Sylphin, where we're starting off the list with Greystone. He's a pretty interesting hero that hasn't really received much of a touch-up since he was released, besides his deflect ability, but essentially, I feel like he could have his skill ceiling increased just a bit. We have to remember he's a beginner hero. He should be easy to play, just period. But I thought that there was a way to increase his skill ceiling and make him perhaps a bit more viable across a lot of skill levels. So his ultimate, Reforged passive. When Greystone dies, his spirit flies above the battlefield instead of staying as a stone feature, as you just saw, and enemies within 900 units get a 3.4 second max movement speed slow of between 125 and 400, depending on how close they are to Greystone. Basically the same, they still get slowed. After a short time, the same amount of time that there currently is, Greystone will smash into the ground at the target location up to 900 units away. So when you immediately go up into the air, his spirit kind of shoots up into the air, you can actually aim where you're going to come down within 900 units away. So there's a small aim mechanic, otherwise you'll just come straight back down to where you died. So you can actually choose where you're going to come down, as we're going to see here, dealing 352 ability damage, which is twice as much as before, to enemies that you land on, and 176 ability damage in a 900 unit radius. It's kind of the same thing as he currently is, except you can just move where you come down and deal double damage on somebody of your choosing. Greystone will have 40% health upon landing, and it's not affected by Blight. I don't think that Greystone should be countered by that card specifically. I mean, Zinx kind of does as well, but for Greystone, it's such a key defining feature. His ultimate, I don't think it should be countered as heavily as it does. He just receives the health. The health, it's kind of like not even healing. He just has that much, right? So it cannot be defected by Blight. Another option, if that's not enough, is to make his deflect also have a passive, or also have an active, pardon me, that uses some mana, because he's not very compelling in the mana usage department. Greystone channels heavenly energy through his shield to gain 50% damage reduction for 5 seconds. He doesn't, however, continue to block instances of basic damage for that duration. So basically, you're kind of choosing, if I want to block basic attacks, say you have, say you're in the late game and you're not like 1v1ing the carry, and you're up against a Zinx or something, I think, or sorry, a caster, I think that provides him an interesting opportunity. Do I just reduce all damage by 50%? Or do I continue to use that passive, say I'm fighting a carry? Very interesting. I mean, of course, balance has to be taken into account, but I think that would make him much more dynamic, while still a new player could still run around and be quite effective. Now, besides him being one of my most favorite heroes and my most favorite announcement videos, to be honest with you, Grim, I think he needs a little bit of a rework. My idea is this: displacement force instead of displacement blast. Grim shoots an energy tether. Basically, it'll look the same thing as his ultimate, maybe just a little less epic, that locks onto an enemy and displaces them in the direction of his choosing. Can be used while moving. This is amazing. It's amazing. Anyways, basically, if you hit with this ability, you then can just move. You just use your mouse, forward, back, left, right, side to side, whatever, to displace them in that direction. It's still a skill shot, and you still have to land it, but you get to actually choose where they go. I think that's a really compelling idea, that, you know, it's still skill shot, you still have to land it, but it's a little bit more reliable into the actual intention behind the ability. His ultimate, honestly, I still think needs a little bit of a buff. And this is a interesting idea. Upon activation, Grim starts to charge up his central power unit. So he starts getting bigger and bigger, and his energy orb thing starts to power up. A lock-on targeting mode slowly engages after 3 seconds. So he starts to automatically aim at people, basically just like the auto aim, but it slowly starts to just kind of be a lock-on after 3 seconds, where Grim either confirms his ultimate, so he shoots his ultimate just like he does now after 3 seconds, or you can choose to continue that lock-on targeting mode for an additional 3 seconds. This can be used while moving, which I think is a really important part, but drains mana if you continue to target, if your lock-on targeting mode continues. So essentially, you have 6 seconds of options. The first 3 seconds, you're charging up this ability, and it's kind of, and you can, you know, move who you're targeting on, and it slowly helps you aim on that target. After 3 seconds, you have straight up lock on ability that you're just pummeling this one hero, because he's a machine, right? He's a machine. It would make sense that a machine should be able to just lock on to a target, right? So it kind of fits with his theme. Just pummeling this person with a basic attacks for 3 seconds, but draining mana. Or after it's locked on, you can confirm it to lob that orb. I think it's a really interesting idea. You give some options for him, and it goes along with his kind of crowd control-y sort of mechanical nature of all of this kind of shield, but slow, but also lock on, but then kind of displace. It really suits that nature, and I like it. The next hero here is Sparrow. She needs a rework. And I don't think it actually takes very much. I honestly don't think it takes very much. Her whole theme is hitting the main target, being accurate with a, you know, with her basic to proc her passive, but also her piercing shot is, you have to aim with it, and it pierces. So she has this whole aim mechanic. Now, her hail of arrows is what she kind of is what's kind of wrong. So we turn hail of arrows into something that also requires you to aim. Sparrow immediately summons a hail of arrows that pierces through enemies in a small cone around her point of aim for 4 seconds at a range of 1,800 units, which is almost half the distance between piercing shot and your basic attack range. Can be used during inner fire. Essentially, Sparrow just keeps basic attacking, but hail of arrows also shoots kind of this cone of other arrows that are just kind of, she's summoning, and they're just kind of flying horizontally in this cone around your targeting reticule. So basically, it's, you can proc your passive in an area that she is aiming at. So you still have to aim. It still goes with her theme, but you can very much more reliably build those stacks on minions that you're piercing through, heroes that you're piercing through, and because it has an extended range, half between piercing shot and your basic attack range, it still kind of acts as that, as what Hail of Arrows used to be, where you place it out down range. I think it's a really cool idea, especially used in conjunction with your inner fire. It provides her really cool opportunity to kind of do a whole bunch of things and emphasize that team fight nature that she really honestly is. She's the only carry with an AoE potential, really, with her ultimate. So combine her ultimate with the new Hail of Arrows, just monstrous. Dekker, she also needs some love, to be honest with you. And here are my ideas. The first one is her stasis bomb. the lobbed nature with how much verticality there is in Monolith, it makes it really, really tough. It makes it really, really tough. So I think that it can still be a lobbed energy bomb, but it hovers over the ground once it reaches the ground. So you can lob it over things, you can lob it, you know, a distance, but it kind of just kind of hovers over the ground. It doesn't really hit it and bounce. It just kind of hovers once it touches the ground. So it can hover down a flight of stairs or hover up a flight of stairs, something like that, instead of bouncing into some random direction, stuff like that. And then it basically does the same thing that it does before. Stuns in an area for 0.5, 1, 1.5, etc. With coming into contact with a hero. It'll still hit minions, like it'll hover close to the ground, and it'll still damage minions. It'll just be much more reliable. Now, what also we can do is her slow bubble. I think her rocket boots maybe should give AoE movement speed as well, but I think her slow bubble is also a very weak point behind Dekker. What I think is that it needs to kind of emphasize her team fight nature with her containment fence. There has to that is why you pick Dekker. You just need a reliable source of control, but you have that wombo combo. Here is the battlefield, and then boom, you know, your team executes on that containment fence. So the AoE, it's still an AoE bubble that applies 125 max movement speed slow to enemies within the bubble and deals 105 ability damage once it pops, but enemies who exit the bubble, only if you exit the bubble, will receive an additional bubble around themselves. It'll basically just look like Spell Shield, but it will be orange, and maybe it'll be a little bit smaller or bigger, just to kind of show which one is which. And that will slow them for 125 movement speed for an additional 2 seconds. So however long you are in that bubble, either you have to say, do I stay in this bubble, or do I exit and get another 125 movement speed slow? In addition, and this may be too much, if they come into contact with an allied hero, so if your enemy touches one of the other enemies, the bubble will spread to that hero. Each hero can only, of course, get that spread once. So essentially, if you put that containment fence down and you put that slow bubble, your enemies have to be like, do I exit this bubble, try to get to a safe spot within the containment fence, but then my allies might be doing that, so I might spread that slow to them, even get further. And as you can see, it's kind of like this snowball effect inside of this containment fence. I think it really suits her nature. Gideon is another interesting hero at the moment. He is getting reworked, and honestly, it does seem absolutely fantastic, but I think his theme needs to be changed. I think Gideon is like the perfect mage. High damage, kind of converts his kit and boom, like he does damage. He's a mage. He's not an ability carry who does insane damage over time, but he's like a mage. High damage, boom, here it is. So I think that he needs to have high damage over like a 3 to 5 second period. Maybe his cosmic rift needs a little bit of an animation or something like that, and then his second meteor that he's getting, that has to happen over time, and then his third ability, his teleport, stuff like that. I think he needs to deal damage. Not too bursty, but does not have that long range, because you know, his ult should deal good damage on top of the stun. And honestly, I feel like his teleport is a little bit at odds. As a mage, maybe he doesn't need that mobility, as he's going to deal a ton of damage. So what I think of is his E, his teleport should be the slow portion of his burden. Yeah, his cosmic rift now will have a slow, but his E needs to be something else. The teleport needs to be incorporated into his ultimate so that he will automatically, when you use your black hole, get teleported up just out of melee range, not too high. He'll automatically teleport up into his black hole. I think it's a really interesting option. And then that provides his E to be something, a slow, another small damage ability that does something. I think, honestly, that's what Gideon needs. The next hero here is Howitzer, and again, I'm feeling like he is also a mage, dealing lots of damage, but not in a terribly long range. It's not a terribly long range influence, just because he has such a good combo, right? His mine into his slow grenades, into his missile. He has a good combo, shortish, medium range influence. So his R2000 missile, I think, needs to be a medium range rocket that deals 165 ability damage in an area. It's just 15% more damage. That basically his R2000 missile, maybe just give it a 15-20% buff, but a medium range one. Howitzer, however, and this is the most important thing, can move in any direction while hovering before confirming the ability. So you know that Howitzer, he kind of hovers when you use his R2000 missile. He can move, he can hover while he's waiting to confirm that ability. So if you want to hover, over a ledge for a little bit, you can just hold that and kind of aim, or you can just use it immediately, etc., etc. That will really help him in being that kind of like auto attack range influence mage, and not kind of just standing still for a Richter hook, for a Kwang tether, for basically anything that can just kind of obliterate him while he's sitting there using his R2000 missile. His ultimate, here's my idea. It's now going to be called tactical nuking. Previously, make it rain. I mean, whatever. I think tactical nuke just kind of emphasizes what the execution of this ability is now. Listen to this. Howitzer uses his antenna to shoot up a targeting laser into the sky. Because of the changes here that I'm proposing, I think it needs to be a little obvious what Howitzer is doing. So that little antenna that you see on his back is going to shoot a laser up that'll make it obvious that he's using his ultimate. Missiles rain down on enemies around Howitzer in, say, like in a Sparrow piercing shot range, or a little bit shorter, like in a pretty generous distance, that rain down, dealing 205 ability damage, the same as before. Those are going to deal half the total amount of damage. That's fine. But after 2 seconds, Howitzer rockets into the air and confirms the location of the tactical nuke, dealing 205 ability damage in an area. It's the same thing as before, same directional boost afterwards. It just makes that last ability, that last nuke, much more effective. And actually, you can just translate that onto your enemy much more. However, it's going to be really obvious that Howitzer's doing that with his antenna. So because it's more easy to do it with his ultimate, you just have to pay attention to him. I think it's really, really cool, because now he can do his combo while his tactical nuke is going, and there's missiles going down, and then he has that where he fires up into the sky, and then he confirms that last missile. Really, really cool. That'll make him so much fun to play. Now, before we go on to Kwang, I think Revenant just needs the smallest little tweak, and that's his obliterate. He should be able to use it while moving. His whole duelist 1v1 nature, to stand still and then use it, doesn't go with the duel. Like, why would you stand still in a gunfight, right? So from that sense, it doesn't really make sense. He's still forced to stay in one direction. Like, he can still only face one direction while moving, but at least that makes his obliterate so he doesn't stand still again for a Richter pull, a Kwang root, just a whole bunch of things. I can just obliterate him while he's standing there puking out of his face. Now, as for the guy that you're actually seeing up here, Kwang, not much needs to change, but I think his idea needs to change. I think that he's kind of like a melee specialist, to be honest with you, with the ability for him to become a pseudo tank, because he still has good control and damage through all of his abilities and his sword, through cards, or a good fighter. He still has good tankiness, again, through his passive. The more damage you deal, the more lifesteal you get to keep you alive, to deal more damage, to get more life, and that's a good positive feedback loop. The numbers behind his stats and abilities, honestly, they need to just be really well tweaked. And I think individual hero scaling maybe needs to come back so that he can't, you know, be too tanky and deal more damage, but also not be able to deal so much damage and be tanky. I think, honestly, his tether radius does need to be reduced back a little bit. Maybe it was too hard to land before, but now it's definitely too easy to land, in my opinion. Yeah, it's fun to land it, but it's not fun to just press 3 buttons and somebody's dead, effectively, in high MMR. So, you know what? I think it does need to be reduced just a wee bit. The next guy here is Wraith, and you know what? Boy does he suck when you're up against a good Wraith Richter combo in the safe lane. The potential there, the skill ceiling is like, it's way up there, and boy, it's kind of dumb. So, back it up. I talked about this with Nadosick, one of the best carries in Paragon at the moment, and kind of came up with an idea. It's mostly my idea. I'm not to put words in his mouth. A long-ranged skill shot, just like Knock Knock, that penetrates geometry, deals 60 ability damage, half that of Knock Knock, and marks an enemy hero to be teleported to their location from 1.5 to 2.5, 3 seconds prior. Teleportation occurs after a short delay. Range does not increase per ability level, but cooldown does. It also won't refund mana or reduce its cooldown if it's a last hit. It's simply just an ability. You snipe somebody with it, deals half the damage of Knock Knock, and returns them back to their previous location. Why does that duration increase? Simply because in the early game, if you're a carry Wraith, which I don't think should be a thing, honestly, I think Wraith is a caster, a utility caster, period. I think, honestly, that just prevents him in the early game from just being completely dumb in the safe lane or in any other lane. It just makes him scale better throughout a match. It just kind of helps him. He'll be able to deal more damage, solidify his role as more of a caster with good utility as well. I really like this idea. It makes him more compelling, more fun, just because currently you land the back it up and somebody's just dead with good comms. So it just makes it way more compelling. Now the next hero is really strong in today's meta. And I think she has an identity crisis. Either she's an assassin who's good at kind of like sub 3 to 4 second damage and is good at 1v1s, which she is, or she's kind of like a melee mage, kind of a odd melee-ish mage that does a lot of damage. But if she's meant to be more of an assassin, because I feel like honestly she's kind of like a melee mage at the moment, then her cooldowns need to be reduced, the tick rate of circle rhythm increased, and the max stacks, but still same overall damage of all kill needs to be reduced. It just depends on kind of like what she's meant to be. Only developers can really answer that question properly. I'm conflicted. I kind of feel like she should be an assassin, but I really like that she's a melee mage. You know, she does, 4 or 5 seconds of her thing, and then she ults, and boom. She's kind of done. Not really, but she kind of, right? She's a really good mage, I feel like. And it just, if she's meant to be an assassin, well then fine. It just, she needs to be able to do her thing in a faster amount of time. And you know what? What do you guys think? What do you guys think should be? The next hero here is Yin. She's really suffering at the moment. She just hit pretty hard. For some reason, pick rate, win rate is down. So here's an idea. She is a melee carry that is kind of has this whole anti-projectile feel with her, with some good mobility. So why not emphasize that fact? Make that draft pick really important. Windburn. Yin extends her whip, increasing the range of her basic attack to the same as before, gains the same cleave, but also can reflect projectiles back at her enemies for that duration. So essentially, it's kind of like her backlash, but she has to be much more precise. You have to exactly time when that projectile is coming in. So when she's 1v1ing a enemy carry, you know, if their basics line up, she'll reflect it. But if you're up against like a Howitzer, then you have to stop basic attacking, just wait for that missile and then basic attacks. So it's not guaranteed, right? You have to line up those basic attacks with the projectiles, but you gain that with Windburn. Her ultimate is also kind of a letdown. Yeah, it's great for kiting melee heroes, but it's not too great. And when you're up against projectile-based heroes, well, you still have to use your Windburn to hit those projectiles from the Quelling Gale out, which means that when you're outside of your ultimate, you don't have it, right? So Quelling Gale, I think that in addition to what it does currently, projectiles that hit the Gale are just automatically reflected back at the target, right? If it's a windstorm, why does it make sense for the projectile to just stay inside of a tornado, right? Things escape a tornado. Things go up and out, and it's just a mess of flying debris. It would make sense for those projectiles that hit Quelling Gale just automatically be reflected back. The next guy here is Crunch, and he's doing pretty well, but I think his identity and how he executes on that can definitely feel much, much better. Now, hear me out on this. It's a bit interesting. The more I think about Crunch, the more I honestly realize he is the closest thing to an ability carry that we currently have. He could be the atypical ability carry out of any other hero. If he was turned into an ability carry, which I think would be a really interesting idea, a few things would need to happen. One, obviously his model, like he's a gigantic machine, would need to be reduced to definitely smaller than like Grim, who's too big already, and kind of like bigger than Sarah, like just smaller, quite a bit smaller. Two, his abilities would have to deal basic damage, because honestly, he hits people with his fists, right? He hits people with his fists. Basic damage, it makes sense. Yes, there are abilities, but lots of other abilities do basic damage. Three, his ability animations would need to scale from attack speed, which would be a wonderful new mechanic. You know, the more attack speed, the faster his abilities go, because they're basically just basic attacks, right? He's still hitting people with his fists. And four, the damage might need to be increased, but it's kind of really hard to say because nobody really builds him like a carry, so it would be interesting. Obviously, that would be a balance issue. If he's to remain a fighter, though, his ability animations still need to scale off attack speed. That is a kind of a point of suffer for him, and/or they just need to be sped up. So, you know, of course there'd still be balance issues in there as well. They would have to be balanced, but I think his identity could definitely come out. Zinx is another hero that I maybe think needs some tweaking. Now, the issue is that ranged tank is naturally a dichotomy, as melee heroes naturally have to be up close to attack and use most of their abilities, and this increases the likelihood of them being focused and being a tank, because you're standing right beside your carry, you're body blocking, etc., etc. Because of this, I almost think she seems like more naturally a ranged brawler that has an influence over time. So she's kind of like a ranged brawler. She's tanky, but she should be able to do some damage because she's a brawler, not a full-on tank. She seems tanky enough at the moment, so perhaps her threat, just her damage, needs to be increased as a brawler, because honestly, Blight does seem to bring her tankiness down to brawlerish levels. Essentially, I think that her Ricochet, honestly, needs to be a bit easier to hit. It's kind of silly how it works right now. It just seems really off. Maybe the larger projectile, faster travel time. In order to engage and initiate her threat, she needs to say, hey, I'm here. Here's a stun. I'm onto you. Or it just needs to be easier to hit, because it's kind of dumb, just to be honest with you. Two, I think her bad medicines, when the projectile hits the ground, it creates a field of energy, deals 70 ability damage on the direct hit, 20% more than it does now. You do get a little burst of damage right off the offset, but it leaves an AoE on the ground that will apply a damage over time effect to any enemies who contact that area, dealing 140 ability damage, 20% more than it is right now, over 4 seconds. The issue is that with movement speed, basically bad medicine is only good for clearing waves. With this, you put it on the ground smartly, but enemies that contact it and move through it get the damage over time, and that damage actually applies to that hero instead of them just walking out of it and nothing happens. Additionally, maybe her kitty claws now deals an additional damage on impact. So right now it just deals damage over time, but maybe it needs to deal damage on impact as well. Basically, it's just 15% more overall damage. It's just a little bit more reliable. It's right right when she hits the target, so that there's a little bit more of a stun, bad medicine into kitty claws, and it's kind of just more direct effect that she has. Maybe that would help. Let me know down in the comments. Another hero is Wukong. Just really quickly, I think his ultimate just needs an options. Either the clones cost mana, which I think would be probably the best idea, or his clones only spawn in his offensive stance. That's not really a nerf because you're not going to be attacking somebody in elusive stance usually. So it's kind of not really a nerf, but at least I would prevent him from using it sometimes. I think the best option there would be his clones cost mana. That's it, guys. That is it. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think of all of these ideas. Amazon is the tried and true way of shopping for anything you need or want at the lowest prices. Support the channel at no cost to you by doing your Amazon shopping through the link in the video description. Please like this video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it, share it with the community, please post it on Reddit, something, if you enjoyed it, because I really feel like this is important. Please check the video description for links to my website, merchandise store, and Amazon affiliate link, as well as following all of my social media. Until next time, like always, guys, stay optimistic and positive.